Thanks for coming on. When we started our podcast, we were like, "Oh, we got to get some guests on," and Kyle always suggested that we have you on. I just
Appreciate
think,
that.
yeah, it's a funny like relationship that we formed, and I feel like for both of us, it was just like at the very beginning of our careers, and both in MMA, and just kind of came up together a little bit. I think that's pretty cool.
It had to be like around this time too. I think it was in January 6 years ago, which is
Yeah,
crazy that it's been
November.
that long.
November.
Well, because it was the MSG card, right?
I think it was right after the
Mm.
MSG card because I remember in my head I was like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna say I think you won that fight because it was
Yeah,
the split
yeah. Because I
decision.
only had 2 fights in the UFC
Yeah,
then.
so in
Right.
my mind I was like, that's gonna be a good line, and I've never met a UFC fighter before you, so I'm like, this is how you relate to UFC fighters. You get on their good side, and I went
Yeah,
up to you
yeah.
and I was like, I think you won that fight, and you were like, no, I didn't, and I was like, oh fuck, I messed it up.
You don't know what you're talking about. No.
Yeah.
So
No, but that was
how you
fun.
did
That
it.
was also like I couldn't believe that you said yes to do it. I think I reached out and was like, "Hey, we want to do a video where like I'm the MMA guy, but I'm kind of a nerd and I'm new here, so maybe we do a video together." And I think it came out very funny. Still to this day, people tweet me about it.
Yeah, it's funny, so if anyone doesn't know, so you came, at the time, were you an intern?
Yeah.
An intern at, Barstool, and then came to Henzo's, and we did kind of like on their, Snapchat, videos, which I think is awesome that you were just like, "All right, I'll try to, like, submit you," and I'm like, but you don't know anything, like, what are you gonna do?" And you just kinda went for it.
Yeah, and honestly, 6 years later, I'm still doing pretty much the same stuff. Like I
You
went and filmed a video with Kayla Harrison
I
I
recently.
saw
saw that.
And I messed up my AC joint. Like I got to go to physical therapy. Like it's a whole thing.
I was
I
like,
never learn.
I saw that and I was like, damn, he went with Kayla. I'm like, she's not
She's big too.
she's
Strong.
Messed me up.
strong. I'm like, she's not gonna like take it easy on him at all.
No, threw me
Yeah.
right on my shoulder. AC joint, physical therapy, X-rays, the whole shebang.
Stop.
Yeah.
Was
It doesn't
when,
take much though, to be fair.
No, it doesn't. To be fair.
when you decided that you wanted to do that with Caitlin, then that was like to get more like into MMA and Barstool, or
With Kayla, it was like
No,
a
Caitlin,
PFL
Caitlin.
ad deal. Oh, with Caitlin, that was
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, like, how do I do a video? Because that was especially like at the time, Barstool was especially transitioning from like blog to people are making original videos and everyone's doing their own kind of content. And I was like, what would be a funny concept as far as like, I look the way I look, right? But I'm the MMA guy. So how
Mhm.
can we like fold that in? And I was like, let's get a girl MMA fighter in here that can just whoop my ass, which isn't hard to find. I mean, you
Y-
walk into any gym, the girls there can whoop my ass. But
For
I was like, let's
sure.
get a name, let's get a local name, especially New York Barstool. And yeah, I reached out, and you were the first person I reached out to, the first person that said yes. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah. It was funny because I remember like then some of my friends were like, I think I just saw you on Barstool's Snapchat. I was like, yeah. They're like,
Beating
you
up
just
some kid.
Yeah, they're like, you were like beating up a little kid. I'm like, he's older. He's fine. He's signed a
Yeah, no, it was
release.
fun. And you know what's
Yeah.
funny is I remember going back into the office right after that, and we had a serious show that was like going on at the time, so it was live, and they brought me right on. They were like, Robbie just got into a fight with like a UFC fighter. And I walked in there and I was kind of like feeling it. I kind of felt like I was in a car accident or something. And they
Adrenaline.
all were like, oh, you're not even marked up. Oh, get out of here. You didn't get into a fight. Get out of here.
They only wanted to see you if you were like really like bruised up.
They wanted to see a black eye or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, were you kind of like was it not obviously there's probably other people, but I feel like you were kind of the person to add MMA to Barstool's content.
Yeah, that was
I,
definitely my thing. Like, I think one
I mean,
person
that's a
had
big
tried
deal.
before me. Yeah. And that was like I was applying for so many years. Like people that know kind of my introduction to Barstool. If you don't, I was applying since I was 13 years old to
Oh
Barstool.
wow.
Wow.
Like emailing Dave,
And
emailing
what
Big
year was
Cat.
that? What year was that?
If I was 13, it would have been, I'm so bad at math. You put me on the spot right there. I don't
Yeah.
appreciate
Kyle's
that.
like autistic
Well,
when it
no,
comes
just
to
because I
years.
I was
listened
like
to Joe on
2011, 2000, or 2012, 2013, I want to say.
because I was listening to Dave on Rogan the other day. I had no idea that Barstool started in like 2003.
as a newspaper. Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so it's been
2013.
this is 20 years for Barstool, but like 2013, I would say, is when I started like applying and basically sending emails saying, "Hey, nobody covers MMA at the site. I'm a pretty big MMA fan. Like, I'm not an expert by any means, but I think I could just talk about it. Like you guys talk about sports the way you
Mm-hmm.
talk about it, like idiots, basically." And I got an email back from Big Cat when I was 14, and it just
Wow.
said like, "Dude, we can't hire a 14-year-old." And I was like, "Yes, that's my foot in the door."
You're
Like
like,
they
it's
they
fine. They know
noticed.
me.
Exactly. So from there, I started doing my own blog. It was called The Squared Octagon, which is kind of a mouthful, but it was kind of supposed to be the squared circle and UFC wrestling and boxing and MMA.
Okay.
And I would just send them sample blogs every single
Wow.
week. I would send them sample podcasts every week and t-shirt designs. Like I kind of was like trying to teach myself graphic design.
You were just doing
Eventually, the
everything.
company moved to New York, like as soon as I graduated high school, and I got an internship with the golf guy, which he was in the video. Riggs, he's like
Yeah.
in my corner in the video, or kind of the referee, kind of both.
Yeah.
He was like my boss at first. I don't know anything about golf, but I was like, I know how to do graphic design. I could edit a podcast. That's all they really needed at the time. That was October of 2016. And then by February of that next year, I was hired full time. And Dave pretty much gave me the reins. He was like, "Hey, we don't have an MMA guy. Go crazy."
Wow.
It's
That's
crazy.
amazing.
That's like, it's so crazy because you think, people are like, oh, that's like you got in and you brought MMA to there. But like hearing that and all the stuff you did from the age of 13, it's like, no, I didn't just go in and say, hey, let's bring MMA on.
It's so crazy. So at 13, you knew exactly what you wanted to do.
Essentially, like I remember like in high school, like when they write like where do you see yourself in 5 years, I would write Barstool Sports.
Wow.
I went to one semester of community college at Bergen Community College in Jersey, and with the goal of like I want to stay in this college until I get hired by Barstool. So that was like my thing. I told my mom like I don't want to go to college, but I'll stay here as long as I don't get hired by Barstool. And it was one semester it took me to get hired, so it was quick.
Crazy. With the blog that you had, was it just like reporting, or was it like funny stuff, or
Yeah,
what
it was
kind of
it was
articles?
kind of like it was my sample for Barstool. So I was writing it as if I was already working for Barstool. So
Right.
it totally had like that jokey, like I was
Yeah.
making fun of like the Reebok deal at the time. That was like a big talking point, and the horrible shirts they were putting out. So
Yes.
I was trying to bring like the funny side to it to show Dave or Big Cat or whoever like
How it
this
would
could be a
work.
thing. And it's funny because I did all of that and it definitely helped, but I never got hired because of it per se. It was when I first met Dave, I was in the elevator with him like the first day I was there for my golf internship. And I was like, "Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Robbie." And he was like, "Robbie Fox." He's like, "You've designed some of the worst t-shirts I've ever seen in my entire life."
You're
And I
like,
was
but
like,
you saw
"Oh,
them.
man." Yeah, but that was like, it was a weird foot in the door situation. But I do think like running the MMA blog or whatever, it helped me like hit the ground running a little bit.
And it was kind of perfect timing too, because, right around then, UFC obviously has been around for a while, but it started gaining more traction. And then, then you were already doing it. And then after, 2020, it's just like skyrocketed the popularity. And I think
Well, Barstool too.
I think both of them together at the same time. And I think for UFC, like a lot, obviously through after the pandemic, it blew up. But I think also with Barstool covering it, it definitely blew it up more. So it's kind of cool with like the younger generation and just, other sports fans kind of got a taste of it. So I
It
think
was
that
cool for
helps
me to
with
see it,
UFC.
like my coworkers get into it during the pandemic. Like before, like I had like a couple people at Barstool. We have at this point 400 employees in the company, which is
Wow.
crazy. Um, when there was even like 100, 200 employees, though, there was one or two other people in the company that I could go to and be like, "Did you see the fights on Saturday?" Like, "Oh my
Wow.
God, let's talk about it." Now there's 10, there's 12, there's 15. Like there's a bunch of people in the company that we could go and talk fights with, and a bunch of people like know what they're talking about, and they just got into it in 2020. It's crazy to see like how quickly you can become a pretty knowledgeable fan of the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because there's shows every week.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think they do a good job, like when you're watching it, if you don't know anything, the commentators explain it pretty well to you. So you don't have to know, you can just turn it on one day and watch one fight and then be like, okay, I kind of get it. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, I saw that person won. And then it's like cool when you see another fight. You're like, wait, I saw them fight before. So you like feel connected
Exactly.
with them. You don't have to know any, like I don't really watch any other sports. You know, when I was younger, I watched football because I lived in Pennsylvania, so everything was like diehard Eagles fans. But now with MMA, there's just so much MMA fights, and I'm like, it's hard for me to watch other sports. Like during in the playoffs, we'll like watch football, and I'm like the commercials and all the other like bullshit stuff. I'm like, I can't watch it. I can't get into it. It's just too different.
No, I agree. I'm a hockey fan, and that gives me a little fill of the violence. But you
Hmm.
watch some. Listen, I don't mean to be a soccer hater, but you watch the World Cup and you see a flop right after you watch like a Justin Gaethje fight, and you're like,
Right.
"What are we doing here?"
Yeah.
It was funny because I had just listened to Dave on Rogan the other day,
Yeah.
and he's still a pretty novice fan.
Oh,
He's-
Dave is such a novice. I texted him right after he did it. Before
Like, he
it
talks
was
about,
out,
like,
and I was
Hoist
just like,
Gracie,
how
like,
did it
he's-
go? Yeah, and he
Yeah.
was like, a lot of MMA talk. He
A
said,
lot
I
of
tried to
MMA
make it
talk.
clear. I don't know what I'm talking about
But
when it
I
comes to MMA.
appreciated that he's like, I'm like, oh, he's so cool that like he didn't try to act like he knew. He was just like, oh,
Yeah,
really?
no.
I don't know. And then they talk. He's like, oh, I saw that fight. Like, I think it's cool that someone, you know, like him, he's just honest and is like, yeah, I don't really know. You
You
know?
could tell that he usually people go on the Rogan and they're like kind of fanboy over Rogan and just agree
Yeah.
with everything he said. Where Dave definitely views them their equals.
Yeah,
Like,
I saw their little like fight over Tommy Fury, which I thought
Yeah.
was so funny. Where Rogan's
But
like,
Dave
"Shut
held
up,
his ground.
shut up and watch."
Yeah. But usually people be like, yeah, you're right. He is a
Yeah.
great fighter.
Yeah,
But
no,
Dave
but
did it.
Dave
It was kind of
Dave
nice.
stand his ground. He will, and I on that argument, I gotta like. Listen, I understand. I respect the fighters and everything. I understand Rogan's side. I do agree with Dave when I look at Tommy Fury's fights and his opponents have a record of like 24 and 187.
Yeah,
I'm like, I think Jake Paul. I'm not a Jake Paul stan by any means, but I think he would murder Tommy Fury.
absolutely you would. Well, Jake Paul's a good boxer, but
Yeah,
I think Rogan comes from the like school of thought, like a trained fighter is killing anyone who's not a trained fighter. So
he
he's like,
puts the
thinks it's
work in. You should
disrespectful-
respect that. Yeah,
disrespectful that if you don't know how to fight at all, you can't say this guy doesn't know how to fight.
exactly.
I think that's Joe's.
But I
Anyway.
part of me is like, as a fighter, I'm like, yeah, that's good if people like stick up for us and like say that, because it's so easy for people to say, oh, they suck, and I'm like, do you know how hard it is to just get in there, even if you're like an amateur at a show, and just to get in there and do it? But then again, that's where it's like the sport's evolving, and I'm like, it's good that people that are common fans are saying like, oh, they suck, because that's what they do to every other sport. So it's
True.
just, that's kind of like the repercussions of it, like becoming a mainstream sport is like, oh, okay, that's how it works, you know?
Yeah. It was a very funny back and forth on the podcast.
it
I'll say
was.
that. And there was one moment where all my coworkers that love MMA were laughing about, I think Joe brought up John Jones versus Daniel Cormier. And Dave was like, yeah, I didn't see that. I only watched the big fights.
Oh,
He's
you
like-
said, yeah. Well, that, because
Doesn't get
that
much
was
bigger
the
than that.
timing, you
it's
know?
like
Yeah.
the biggest.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
the
well,
biggest
that-
rivalry the sport's ever seen.
Yeah. So now Dave mentioned how he likes boxing better. Now, now you're involved in that Rough and Rowdy with him.
Yeah. Rough and
Talk
Rowdy
about
is,
that.
it's legitimately probably my favorite thing we do at Barstool. It's like brings me so much joy to do. And that was
Always
something
West Virginia.
Dave noticed it like 10, 12 years ago in West Virginia when Barstool was much smaller and was just like, people are fighting each other, like basically like in the backwoods of West Virginia for like $500 fighting multiple times a night. This is crazy. So he went down and made like a classic video. You could still find it 2012-ish, I think, with all of these fighters, just him, not commentating or anything, just like watching and being like, what is this? When Chernin acquired Barstool, probably like 6 years ago, he immediately was like, let's buy this. Let's just buy the company and let's put the events on pay-per-view and we'll call it like it's like a massive thing. We'll pay the fighters a little more. We'll put big lights and, you know, all the smoke and mirrors on it. Let's do that. And from the start, I was like, oh, I want to be involved in that. And I think in the beginning, I was very new to Barstool. He was like, calm down, Robbie. We're putting on pay-per-views here. But by like pay-per-view 3, I think Rough and Rowdy 3, I started getting involved doing ringside interviews. And then I said, I think I would be like a funny third chair commentator. Like you and Big Cat are the show. That's what people are buying for. But I think I could like jump in with quips here and there. We tried it Rough and Rowdy like 7 or something, and we're up to like 19. I've done every one
Wow.
since pretty much. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, it is like the greatest variety show ever because you get fights that are actually good, some fights that are good. Most fights are horrendous, but they're so bad they're good in like the funniest way possible. The ring girls in between rounds are some of the craziest entertainment you'll ever see. And then you
Yeah.
get like the commentary, the Barstool personalities on the mics, sometimes Barstool personalities fighting,
I
people on
watched
the
the
ringside stuff.
I've always seen like highlights and and clips of it, and then I like the girl Grace
Yeah.
just fought. So I was like, because I follow her on TikTok, and then watching her like training for it, I think she's hilarious. I love her, and watching her training for it, and they had like like behind the scenes footage of her like in the in the locker room and stuff, and then she actually like for like a girl that doesn't do that to like go in and fight, I was like, that's insane. I'm like that she's doing that. Like
And it's
I don't
like
think people understand how much that takes just for her to do that.
you're untrained and you're fighting in front of like 40,000 people on pay-per-view and then the arena we did the dunk in Providence, which is like that's where they do concerts. We had like 4 or 5,000 people there, I think, all chanting
Wow.
her name. It's like the only place where you could simulate what it's like to be a champion fighter. Like and
Yeah.
you're fighting,
So
someone that's never fought before.
Well, she
so
had the whole crew. So like when she had her whole crew like in
All
the
people
locker
from
room with this,
Barstool
I'm like,
walking her out and stuff.
I was
Yeah.
like getting pumped up. I'm like, this is
Yeah.
like what it's like, not for a UFC fight, but it's like for like a UFC champion fight.
Yeah.
Like it was intense. It was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
so with you guys spotlighting it like that and putting it on a stage, doesn't it change the dynamic? Like they become like more like serious real fighters, like training wise, and like isn't that
Some of
gonna
them,
kind of
yeah.
go away
Like
from?
our champ, Bobby Lang, our heavyweight champ, he's become like he's like a real fighter at this
That's what
point.
I
He beat
mean.
Pac-Man Jones twice, and Pac-Man Jones is no slouch. Like he's a very athletic dude. So on his level, yeah, like we've got some fighters that are like, I'm training full time. Like this is
Right,
my
because if you're
full-time
giving them
job.
that platform, they could, potentially leverage that into like a bigger show, or I mean, not even bigger,
Absolutely.
but more professional. Because my friend was involved with a company that does like MMA fights. It's like a Russian company, and he was like the referee for it. It's like in the desert in Nevada or something.
Nice.
And he was like, "Yeah, they're not trained." I'm like, "But how do you make sure they're not trained? Because someone just trains for a year and goes and fucks everyone up." Like that's kind of a difficult thing when you put like untrained fights on, if that's the angle.
Oh, yeah.
Because someone could easily
Definitely.
just train a little bit.
And sometimes there's mismatches. And
Right.
It's like,
That's
well,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
Well, it's
I
kind of
guess
like
that poor soul got mismatched.
Right.
yeah, it's kind of
right.
like the beginning of like Jake Paul, and it's like, oh, he's a
Right.
YouTuber. It's like you can't say that anymore. Like even when it was even his
I know.
first like fight or two, he wasn't just a YouTuber. First of all, he's like freak athlete. Didn't
Yep.
he like wrestle and
Yeah.
wrestled
In
and
Ohio.
like has like professional trainers. So it's like, and then
And you have
now
limited-
it's been a few years and he's had fights and more training camps and experience. I'm like, he's not a YouTuber. He's a boxer.
Put on a good fight against Anderson Silva, like beat him on the
Oh,
cards.
yeah.
He beat Tyron Woodley, a former champ. Like you got to respect him at this
No,
point.
he's a good fighter,
Yeah.
Yeah.
good boxer.
Do I
for
think he
sure.
could beat Canelo? No.
Well, of course.
But
yeah.
I think he's a very respectable boxer. That's another thing. Rough and Rowdy this year kind of turned into us calling 2 Canelo fights, which was crazy.
Wow, That's
Like
wild.
DAZN noticed Rough and Rowdy, and we're like, we would like to bring that exact crew to Vegas for Canelo and Bivol, and then Canelo Triple G. And
You
it
were
was
at
like
those?
me, Dave, and Big Cat on commentary, and then
That's-
Caleb and Rowan on the ringside interviews, which is exactly how we do Rough and Rowdy, but
That's
for
incredible.
Isn't there
you know,
sometimes where
Canelo.
you're like sitting there and you're like, wait, did we really like? Is this really happening?
all the
Like,
time, like
how do we, like-
100% of the time.
I remember the first time. I don't know if it was like if I fought. I think I fought or at MSG, but I think it was earlier. Or maybe I was at a fight and I saw this was not long after I met you, and then I saw you with like in like the media for
It's
MMA,
UFC
and I
Long
was like,
Island.
I was almost like, what are you doing here? I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, you know what I mean? Because I met you like, I didn't know you were like kind of that high up. I met you as like the intern,
Yeah.
like just came and got beat up by me.
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden I'm
literally
like, holy
intern
shit.
Robbie
And then
was
it's so
in,
cool
in the video.
seeing-
That's what it says. Doesn't
Yeah.
even say my last name.
Yeah.
So yeah, because for a while you were just getting a lot of press from just being like Connor's #1 fan. You were at the jail when he got bailed out. Like,
which I wish he was still more active, because that video series, one of my
Yeah.
favorite things in the world to
I
do.
bet. Yeah.
Because just like the polar opposites of like, you get the Connors diehard fans who are like, you're speaking my Bible. Like this is the most, and you're like, okay. And then you get the Connor haters that are like, how can he say Connor would beat Khabib and won if they rematched? Like, and you get them so you say that you know, it's easy to get people flustered when it comes to Conor McGregor.
Oh, for
So
sure.
I can't wait till he comes back to make more stupid videos like that, to be completely honest.
Yeah, hopefully he does this year.
I always want Connor, like,
It's
And I hope
better
he
when
stays
he's
out of
around.
trouble, you know, make the videos funny, you know. I
Yeah.
don't want to do any of the serious videos anymore with Connor.
right. But I love when he's, you know, MMA is just so much better when he's fighting.
So much more fun.
I
It's
mean,
just
now
so
they
much
have
more
so
fun.
much going on that it kind of makes up for, you know, but nothing compares to that.
I went to court for him, literally.
Yeah.
I got a summons, went to court, did the whole shebang.
That's amazing.
It was
Yeah,
great.
the video when I think the one time when he like got off the press conference and like noticed you in the crowd or
Oh,
something.
he shouted me out for the first time.
Yeah,
That was a moment where I was like, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Like the biggest fighter in the world. Why does he know my name?
Yeah.
That's sick.
It's so funny.
So, what do you think with Jake Paul signing with PFL?
I think it's interesting. Like, I think it's smart with PFL. I'm really hesitant about him fighting. Like, I don't know if I believe he's going to fight.
That's kind
An
of
MMA fight.
I kind of think he said, "Oh, I signed to fight in PFL to put a lot of eyes on the announcement." And I think he's going to promote the hell out of PFL and become a partner in their league or whatever, which is smart. He's got his feud with Dana. They're the competitor, not a competitor, but they're number
not.
2, right? And a far gap between 1 and 2, but they say they're number 2 now. So smart move by them. I'd be shocked if he actually fought MMA though. I know he's got the Ohio wrestling experience or whatever, but I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. I can see him doing like a boxing match in the cage with 4-ounce gloves.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I was
Something
thinking.
hybrid rules like that or something. Yeah.
Or I don't know what his weight was, but they had like, wasn't it like Muhammad Ali's grandson or fight there?
Yeah.
They had him fight the last time. I don't know if their
I
weights
think
are.
he's 155.
He was
little.
kind of skinnier,
Yeah.
right? But I was like, oh, something like that, like an amateur MMA fighter like that, or you know what I mean? But what you said, I also agree with, like having them do a boxing match with the MMA gloves or something, or not even fighting. PFL does a good job at, you know, they're like obsessed with. They have Wiz Khalifa performs and promotes. They have like 50 Cent, Liver King goes to all their events, so they do a good job of like you know, getting different like celebrities and to help kind of legitimize their promotion.
Even just the younger audience, like bringing them in, like it's pretty smart with that. The Nate Diaz thing I thought was interesting, that he said like he offered Nate Diaz the 2-fight deal, boxing first. 6 months later, you would fight him in MMA. I feel like if you're Nate Diaz, like if that's true and there's no, like, what's the catch? That's my perspective, because why would you not sign that?
He's a lot bigger than Nate Diaz.
He is, but don't you think in the cage, Nate Diaz could take him down, strangle him, right? And even if you get knocked out in boxing, that's the last thing in people's minds if the MMA match is second.
Yeah, and boxing, at least this is how I think of it. I think of boxing as I think of wrestling. Like boxing's a terrific, very hard, difficult, tough sport, but it's not a fight.
Yeah.
Fighting is fighting. And there's
Like
a
MMA.
big difference. Fighting is MMA, MMA fighting. So you could be like, oh, I lost the contest, the boxing contest, but I won the fight. So
Totally.
he'd get the last
and
laugh.
people love Nate so much that he loses a boxing fight. Even if he gets knocked out in boxing, he'll be like, that wasn't a fight, pussy.
It wasn't a
and then
fight,
people will
yeah.
be like,
He's so much bigger.
he's back. Yeah, like they're in, you know?
Yeah. I don't think Nate would take him down necessarily, but he's good enough off his back that he'd probably submit him.
Yeah, pull
Figure out a
guard.
way.
I don't know what he would do.
Yeah.
Well, no, he wouldn't pull guard. He has too much pride to do that.
Yeah, it's just
What-
maybe get taken down and then throw
Yeah,
up a
but he's not gonna
triangle.
go. Jake's not gonna go.
He
for
might
Jake.
if he's getting leg kicked enough.
I don't know.
Yeah.
He might
Have him shooting like Connor. Oh, you're a wrestler now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, he is a wrestler though. He's
Yeah.
a wrestler first.
True.
Yeah.
That's
I
what he
don't
said in
know.
the PFL announcement too. He was like, I've got a background in wrestling. And it's funny when you're like, your background at this point is kind of boxing because you've beaten Anderson
Yeah.
Silva in boxing and you've
Right,
beaten,
right.
you placed well in high school in wrestling, but I don't know if that's your background at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you have like unlimited resources like he has, and you could hire the best trainers and the best nutritionists and the best of everything, you
Yeah.
could get pretty good at anything.
Oh yeah, he showed it with boxing.
Yeah.
That like he dedicated his life to it for like 4 years. and
Right.
God damn it, it showed.
And he definitely like trains really hard because you can have the best coaches and stuff, but he is into being like a
Yeah.
fighter and like doing like the legit fight camps and training like that.
Yeah, like a real professional.
Because that's not
athlete.
easy. You could have all the trainers in the world, but you still gotta get up and work out twice a day and do all that and spar people and get beat up and like still keep coming back.
Yeah, I respect that. Even Logan Paul's doing the WWE stuff now. He's kind of crushing it over there, to be honest. He just got hurt, but unbelievably good, to be honest.
Well, he's so charismatic.
Yeah,
Right.
and he knows like that people hate him, and he plays into that so well. And his character there is good, and just like both the Paul brothers, pretty impressive 2022, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm not their
yeah,
biggest
of
fan,
course.
but impressive 2022.
I kind of thought I was hoping that they would have set up that Andrew Tate fight. Obviously, that's probably on the back
Oh
burner.
my God,
now.
I know. Because
That
also,
would've
like,
been-
how many opponents out there are like very interesting for Jake Paul right now?
Well, no
like,
one,
Nate
unless
Diaz,
they're
wanna
a really
see,
good
like,
boxer.
Exactly. And it's
Right.
like Tommy Fury,
I feel
I
like
don't know
that
if
was
the interest is really
interesting
there.
for a minute and then it passed by and now it's
Yeah.
not interesting anymore.
like people don't really like Jake Paul, Andrew Tate. That would be like everyone would tune into that.
Yeah,
it'd
I'd
be
be
very-
like when they start, and then at first they mentioned it, I was like, he would like Andrew Tate would never do that, and then he kind of like flirted with the idea a little bit, and I was like, oh my god, I'm pumped.
Was he a
for
good
this.
kickboxer? I have no idea about him.
You know what's funny is all those like organizations. It's hard to say. Like he didn't fight in like Glory Kickboxing, where
Yeah.
those guys are legit like incredible kickboxers. I always see his highlights, and for whatever reason, I don't give it a ton of credit because he's wearing pants. Like
He
I don't
wears
know what.
pants.
Yeah,
Like-
so I don't
like
know what
spandex
organization
pants?
that is.
That's like
no,
old-
like baggy, like
Like almost like karate pants.
Huh.
so.
That's like old school like kickboxing.
I don't think that it's like Glory Kickboxing. It's a different organization, and I could be completely wrong, and it could be super legit. But anytime I see the highlights and he's wearing like these baggy pants,
it's hard to
I'm
take
like,
it seriously.
That's rough and rowdy style. We get a lot of baggy pants and rough and
Right.
rowdy.
You probably get
Rough
some
and rowdy.
like some jean shorts, right?
Jeans. Yep.
Yeah.
We get straight up jeans, workers' boots, Tims. Yeah.
Yeah.
Barefoot.
that's
All
in
of it.
West Virginia. You said
So it started in West Virginia, but now it kind of moves all over. The last one is in Providence. We've done Atlanta. We've done Jacksonville. We're going to do 2 in Tennessee this year. So we're kind of like expanding it.
so for a while I was like obsessed with. Did you ever watch the Soft White Underbelly?
No.
It's a YouTube channel. It's huge. He's got like 6 million subscribers, but he goes to like freak show places. No, I shouldn't say it. Like crazy places like Appalachia, West Virginia. That's a big thing he does. And he just interviews these people. They don't have electricity.
Oh,
Like-
it's some of the places we've been to in West Virginia are crazy. Like we've
Yeah.
been to a town where they're like, hey, get your texts off. No Wi-Fi in this town. And you're
Yeah,
like,
no,
oh,
these people literally don't have
Like, no
electricity or running
service.
water.
exactly.
Like they don't know
It's
about
crazy.
the internet. Mm-hmm.
Crazy stuff. I just had coworkers go to Alaska for a video. Like they do this Rediscovering America series, and they went to a town where the whole town lives in the same building. There's one building in the town. Everyone works in the building. Everyone lives in the building. To get there, you have to go through a tunnel that's like 3 miles long, and they shut it at night or something. So it's like if you're in, you're in.
I don't understand.
Crazy
Like, why
stuff,
would
like-
you? Why would you live there?
Yeah.
I think it's people that were just like born there. They're like, I was born in the building. I'll die in the building.
Oh
You
my
know,
building.
the building, yeah, that's insane.
It is.
I want to go to one of the Rough and Rowdies after watching like all the behind the scenes stuff for like Grace and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to go.
Oh, it'd be so much fun.
When I
It-
saw
it-
she
mean,
was
we-
training, I was like, oh, I should reach out to her. I should try. I should help her.
Oh, you
prepare
should
for
have,
it.
because like you should. If we have another employee fight or something, if they're New York local or something, they're in the area. It'd be so much fun to build it up like that. We've had like fighters come and walk people out. Like Rockhold walked someone out once. We've
Yeah.
had people in their corner. People join
I
us on
saw that for
commentary for a
Vola.
fight.
Frivola, I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
Frivola's
Oh,
brother
yeah.
fought.
Oh, was it his brother? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I remember them posting
for his
about it. It
bachelor
was-
party. That was like
Yeah.
a great bachelor party. They went down to West Virginia, got a knockout, played some paintball.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, if Grace does another one, I want to help her out.
She might. She had that look in her eyes, like the
Dude,
whole
she
fight.
was game.
She had that like scary look. It only
Mhm.
went off when like her hand got raised. Then she could smile finally. It was great. Her
Yeah.
mom was also ringside, and that was like just so cool to see. Like a mom going crazy for her daughter, like fighting for the first time.
Yeah.
Rough and Rowdy like gives you those moments that you can only see there, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some crazy things. What was that organization long time ago? It was like not celebrity boxing, but Tough Man, I think it was. Do you remember that?
Yeah, so that's like Rough and Rowdy kind of started as an extension of that, I think.
Right. That's kind of what I
And it
thought.
was like the Tough Man tournament where it was like all in one night where you would see someone like make their way up and win the main event, like 3 fights in one night.
Right. So this kind of segues into like something that was in the MMA news today or this week. Do you remember Phil Baroni?
Oh my God. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So he just got arrested this week for
I don't know why I'm like
murdering
smiling
his-
and laughing.
Murder.
It's not funny.
Murder
Well,
his
it's just 'cause it's
girlfriend.
so crazy.
But he did that Tough Man like before he went to Pride. I've known Phil forever. I've known him for like
Oh,
from Long
really?
Island. Oh yeah. But he was in that like Tough Man and like knocking people out, and that's
How
kinda
did you react to the news as someone that like knew him forever?
Not surprised.
Not even like a little
Really?
bit surprised. He's had
I
a
saw
really
people say
tough
that.
run like the last, I haven't seen him probably in 10 years, but I did always have a soft spot in my heart for Phil Baroni because that's kind of a funny story, but we were training fighting, and this was when I was fighting, and I was living, maybe I spent like 6 months with staying at Josh Koscheck's house, and Phil Baroni was there for like 3 of those months. And at the time, I was dating a girl, and she lived like here, and then I had her come visit. And I told him before, I was like, yeah, this girl's coming out from New Jersey. She's going to visit for a few days. And he's, oh, I can't wait to have some nice hot East Coast pussy around here. I was like, oh, I can't wait. And I was like, okay. And he was like,
You're
yeah,
like,
I'm pumped for
"It was
that
the-
East
it
Coast
was-
girl
it
to
was
come
my
stay
girl,
with us."
reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then she came and then hung out, whatever, then left. And then she kind of like broke up with me like the next week. And I was pretty depressed. And Phil's like, why are you depressed? And I was like, well, the girl dumped me. She broke up with me. And then Phil's like, that girl that was here, she's fucking disgusting. She's so gross. I was so disappointed when you told me a hot East Coast girl was coming. You kept saying East Coast. And I was like, really?
Oh my
Like, she
God.
definitely
As you're
wasn't.
sitting there heartbroken.
No, but he knew that would like make me feel better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I was
trying
like,
to get your spirits up. a
yeah, it
little.
kind of made me feel better. And I was like, man, I wonder if he really thought that or if he was just trying to be nice. And I always kind of
Yeah.
like,
But it still kind of worked.
it worked. And I
Yeah.
kind of had a
Yeah.
soft spot for him. But then his life kind of really went down the last like 10, 12 years. But then I saw that on Monday and I was like, damn.
But actually, like
Terrible.
this time, maybe not this past summer, the one before, or like a year ago, he was on Long Island and he was like messaging Kyle all the time, like, can you pick me up? Let's go to the gym. Let's work out. Pick me
Say,
up.
I don't have a car. Can you pick me
Oh
up?
man, that's
and
sad.
then Kyle was like, oh, we should get him on the podcast. And then I was like, oh, he's like, he definitely have some crazy stories. We should get him on. And then I was like, follow up with it. Even if you have to pick him up, if he's a good guest, we'll get him on. And he's like, yeah, the only problem is we record at our house. And I remember Kyle saying, he's like, I don't really want him to know where I live. And I was like, oh my God, really? I was like, okay, never mind. And then like a year later, he's like, gets arrested for murder. I'm like, yeah,
I saw
that's good
Josh
thing
Barnett. He had like a big Twitter thread kind of about it where he was like, I've known Phil for 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
Not
Yeah.
surprised. Like I think, CTE, drugs, whatever it might have been, but he kind of went
Yeah.
down this path forever. It's funny you say that you didn't want him to know where you live because that's like why Rogan originally got a studio, he said.
Really?
He used to do all like when he started the podcast, do them all at his house. And then he was like, eventually I started getting these people on the podcast where I was like, maybe I don't want them to know where I live.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably better, especially
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank God that didn't happen, I guess.
Yeah. It would have been
Pretty
good to throw
crazy.
up a throwback clip this week, though. Could have got some views.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
you
nuts,
could
though.
have.
I was-
The algorithm's on Phil Baroni right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because a lot of people were saying, "Oh, bad week for the UFC" because Dana had his incident, and then that. Then I was like, I don't think you can really count Phil Baroni as
No.
UFC. It's been
Yeah.
like
Can't.
17
You
years.
absolutely can't. No.
He had a couple UFC fights.
I
like,
only
20
know
years
him
ago.
like I'm in the UFC and I only know him from like because you know him and you guys saying stories.
But that's what all the comments were saying. They're like, bad week for the UFC.
Yeah.
Like, no, man. That's
No.
nothing to
the
do with it.
UFC's like we don't
Yeah.
claim Phil Baroni.
Yeah, not at all. I saw some people saying Baroni was Mike Perry before Mike Perry.
Oh, he was
that's
way ahead of his
actually-
time.
That
He
was a pretty
yeah.
good comparison.
That's
Very
very
good.
good. Yeah.
Very good.
I mean, it's hard to compare someone.
Well,
with
I think
with
Mike
murder,
Perry's
but-
probably a better fighter, but
And
the
probably
time.
a better human. He hasn't murdered anyone to our knowledge.
no, hasn't murdered anyone.
That's what I'm
Also,
saying. I'm
what
like,
about
if I'm
him for
Mike
Jake
Perry, I'm
Paul?
like, don't compare me to someone that murders.
I like Mike
Can-
Perry.
Can Mike Perry fight Jake Paul?
I would love that.
Did I see? Are they talking about that? I feel like
I
I've
think
seen
some
that.
people have kicked it up because he beat Michael Venom Page in bare knuckle.
Yeah.
I think Mike
a little
Perry fucks
surprising.
him up in like a bare knuckle.
In
Yeah.
bare knuckle, but what about like
Yeah.
straight boxing?
I think Mike Perry beats him.
Really?
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, I think Mike Perry beats him pretty.
A more
pretty
active
easily.
fighter, like he's going after the retired fighters, which
And he's got like
I
a
don't,
different.
I don't like to give him shit for because it's Anderson Silva. Like, come on,
But-
the kid's fighting Anderson Silva in his fourth fight. Like,
Right.
pretty impressive.
But
Yeah.
Mike Perry is like so aggressive and like
He's a
goes
savage, yeah.
forward and,
and
like
has no respect.
no respect and like
Yeah.
willing to take a shot. Like I
He'll
think
get
that'd
hit
be a hard
100
fight.
times to land one.
That'd be a hard fight for him.
Yeah. And he's like he's bigger.
Is he bigger?
I feel like
No,
they're-
Jake Paul's big.
Is he
Jake Paul's my size.
really?
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Did Perry fight at 185 or 170?
70.
But he like
Yeah.
missed weight by like 10 pounds all the time.
Did he?
Yeah.
But he's short though. He's not big.
Yeah. But I think he missed weight by like a lot. But he was always like, I don't think it was because he was big. I think he just kind of wasn't super disciplined with that aspect of it.
So the other thing, on your Instagram lately, I don't know, maybe over the last like year, you do the band stories.
Yeah.
Is that just like to get a bigger audience or?
So I like love music. Like I got all stuff behind me. Like that's Muhammad Ali and the Beatles, Kurt Cobain, Led Zeppelin. I just love music. And we have a band at Barstool that was formed like just with employees. I was listening to
Okay.
Blink 182 a little too loud one day in the office, one of my favorite bands. And Roan, who sits across from me, who is a 2-time like world champion battle rapper, legit like Eminem style battle rap stuff, was listening to it and he was laughing. He's like, dude, the way that guy is singing so whiny like that is hysterical. Like such
Uh-huh.
teenage angst in the music you listen to. And he was like, I bet we could start a band and write a song like that. So we were like, all right, let's write a song like that. We wrote one song and the plan was put the song out and then put out like a VH1 behind the music documentary about why the band broke up. And like,
Okay.
you know, I went down, got a heroin addiction, so-and-so went down in jail, whatever, like crazy story like that. And people liked the one song and they said, you should do another song. So we did another song and then we did another, and we kind of just like kept doing songs.
Can you
And
listen to these
Dave-
anywhere? Where are these?
Yeah, they're all on YouTube, on Spotify. So the band's
Mhm.
called Pup Punk because we do pop punk music. And Dave Portnoy has a thick Boston accent. He can't say pop punk. He says pup punk.
Oh,
So that's
yeah.
why it's the name of our band.
Pup.
And yeah, just like we do shows that are a lot of fun where we'll have like 20 songs on our set list live and 2 of them will be originals and 18 of them will be covers that everyone in the crowd knows.
I love
You
covers.
know, Blink 182 songs, the Fall Out Boy songs,
Yeah.
all that style music, early 2000s rock, pop punk. So that's like, other than Rough and Rowdy, that's like my favorite thing to do. It's the live events that I love, the Rough and Rowdies, the concerts, that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Did you know like you're basically like a performer? I mean, obviously in the band, but even when you're doing like commentating, I mean, that's not easy. Every fighter always thinks like, oh, when I'm done, I would do commentating. It's like, it's not like that.
Yeah.
Just because you fight doesn't mean you can do that. I mean, it's a totally different realm of skills to have that. Do you think
Yeah.
that like from doing it, you just get better at it? But I feel like you were pretty good at it right away without any practice.
Yeah, I never really thought about it much. Like, I think I kind of like eased my way into it too. Like, I think if you listen to my first Rough and Rowdy and my like latest Rough and Rowdy, I think I probably said 10% of what I said, you know, in the latest one, in the first one. I was really trying to pick my spots. And I think in the first one, I was even like almost trying to be like the Harold Letterman, like throw over to me and I'll say 10-9 this guy, like throw it back over to you. So it was like a little bit of trial and error in that way of just like
Of course.
now more of just like the quick hit a quick joke, get out, go in like say the info about the fighters. That's something that I'll do now. Like I'll do the research beforehand because Dave and Big Cat are crazy busy all the time. So I'll kind of like give a couple tidbits about each fighter, what they're fighting for, what
So
their
you're like the
record is
Anik
previously.
of the group.
Exactly. Exactly. So I try to be that and then let them go crazy. But yeah, the pup punk, like being a performer in that way, I was way more anxious for like than commentary, which is funny because like when I'm on stage, like nobody hears me, like other than my bass or whatever. But it's not
Mm-hmm.
like I'm talking. But commentary, like I was never really nervous for. I was like, this is gonna be fun. Like talking fights, like I could do that. Playing bass, I was like, oh my god, how do I do that? Like I was like ready to throw up.
Well, it's yeah,
Wow.
because then you're like you almost feel like people are there watching you and judging you. Whereas when you're
Yeah,
commentating, some people, everyone's judging someone, but there you're
but the
the
people are at
focus is on
home,
the
they can't
yeah,
hear, like the people there can't hear me. So it is like that removal of it, like
yeah.
all eyes on you. But bass, like I had been playing since middle school. So even like back then, I just never got used to it until like 2 or 3 years ago.
It's so crazy. Like everything you did in basically like middle school, early high school is like the same thing you're doing right now.
Just never grew up.
Yeah. That's I
That's
That's
mean
the way to live.
amazing.
Yeah.
that's kind of how I feel. I'm
I
like,
got toys
"Oh,
behind me. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that's how I feel. I'm like, "Oh, I used to go to karate classes and I kind of feel like I'm still going to karate classes and going to tournaments." You know what I mean? It's the same thing. I think that's like, you know what I mean? You're like I always think of it, I'm like, "Oh, I never like had to get a job." Like
Totally. That's
I'm
how I
like,
feel.
yeah, kind of like
I'm
scam
like
the system.
truly having fun like with my friends every day and we just put it on the internet and that's the work.
And then at Barstool, like you kind of have, I mean, the creative possibilities is pretty much endless. Like if you just come up with different ideas all the time, so you're not really getting bored.
That's the other thing, like, that's why I'm able to do the band stuff, but also the MMA stuff. When I started, it was just like, let me just do MMA. And then
Hmm.
slowly but surely, it was like, oh, I also like pro wrestling. Maybe I could write a blog about that here and there. Oh, I also like nerdy stuff like Star Wars movies and Marvel movies. So maybe I could write a blog about that. And then I expanded into music. And now, like you said, it's whatever I wake up that day deciding I want to write about or talk about, I could talk about.
It's just content. They just want you to be putting
Exactly.
out new
As
content.
long as you're putting stuff out, it's fine. Like, doesn't really matter what it's about as long as people are reacting to it like it.
Do you have free reign to put out whatever you want, or do you have to get stuff approved?
No, free reign, like
Wow.
complete creative freedom, like for pretty much everyone here, I would say. And it's like a double-edged sword because you don't get any direction. So it's also like a sink or swim. Like sometimes you feel like you're on an island. Like, what do I do to be successful here? But it's just you got to figure it out. Like everyone figures it out eventually. You figure out your lane, kind of stick to it. But I definitely prefer the creative freedom because sometimes you wake up and like being in the MMA world every day, you guys know, sometimes you wake up, you're like, I'd rather talk about a Netflix show than
Yeah.
MMA
Sure. Yeah.
today. And like having the freedom to do that is so much fun and makes me like more interested in MMA because I don't get burnt out of like
Yeah.
one thing. MMA, wrestling, whatever it may be. Never get burnt out because you change it up all the time.
That's great. Now, do they like follow your like analytics, like your views and stuff? Do you
Oh
have to
yeah.
reach a certain amount?
Oh yeah. There's the
They're
thresholds and whatnot, and
yeah.
that's like it's stressful to hit, but it's also like it's not like if I don't hit a threshold, they're like, "You're fired. We hate you. Get out of here." It's
Because they
like,
understand
"All
how
right,
it
let's pick it up."
goes.
Yeah, like they'll be like, "Hey, work with so and so. Maybe see if you can get something up." So it's like they're in place and they're stressful and everyone wants to hit them, but
Yeah.
it's not like a crazy requirement necessarily. Like if you don't hit this, you're out.
Like, what are they looking at? Views or engagement or what?
Everything,
Everything.
engagement, views, podcast downloads, like they have like on our back end like a way to look at the basically the entire brand where it will connect TikTok, YouTube,
Wow.
Twitter, Instagram, kind of all into the same like source so you could see everything all
And
together.
then they let you know like every week, or do they? How often?
We could
Uh,
see that ourselves too.
okay.
So it's like we could go in and check our own stuff kind of like, and that's very helpful for blogs too, because it's like, all right, do recaps do well or do like funny stories do well? And you could go in and see, okay, the funny story did 50,000 more clicks. I'll stick to that more than trying to break down the X's and O's of the fight game. you know,
Are
like
you ever
stuff like
surprised
that.
that something does well that you're like, why did that do well? And are you ever surprised, or do you usually have an
Yeah.
idea?
I know. I think you get surprised. Like
Yeah.
I've had like such random blogs will take off sometimes, like the blogs you put the least amount of work into,
That's
and
what
it's
everyone says
frustrating.
about
Yeah,
content.
that's what
Yeah.
I've heard
Like
too.
that's what gets frustrating. Like today, like I wrote like what I thought was a very funny blog about a punk rock show this weekend where someone brought like an old box TV, like a giant TV from the 90s, and just
Uh-huh.
threw it into the mosh pit. And then they started throwing this TV at each other like violently. And I was like, this is the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. So I wrote a big blog about it. Didn't seem like anything really took off. Immediately threw up like a throwaway blog about a Jimmy Page video that I think is funny. And that one took off like right
Yeah.
afterwards. And it's like, all right, I guess like you
Yeah.
got to just like shoot a bunch and be a volume shooter because eventually one will take off. And that's the thing with like TikTok too. I'm not a TikToker. I'm trying to get into it because that's the thing. That's the new thing.
Yeah.
Social media. Got to get on TikTok. That's where it surprises me what takes off and what doesn't. Because some TikToks,
Because they're only
will-
5 seconds, right? Like
and
3.
some will go crazy. Like some will hit 1 million. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I think the numbers on that are fake. I don't think 1 million people have watched that.
Right.
And then the next one will hit 267. And you're like,
Yeah.
how does that happen? One here, one there. So it's like
Wild.
more the social media stuff than the Barstool blog stuff, I would say.
So a lot of yours is like you talk about being funny in the plot. Are you interested in comedy?
Like stand-up comedy?
Yeah, stand up.
I think I'm too much of a wuss, to be completely honest with
Yeah.
you. I think I have so much anxiety. Like I love stand-up comedy. I listen
do
to
we.
stand-up comedians podcasts all the time. The Two Bears, One Caves of the world, like all of that. Love that stuff. I can't like see myself being able to make the walk to the stage. I'm talking about it like I'm making the walk to the cage.
Yeah.
Like that's that's how like intimidating it seems to me. But like
What about like with joke
never
writing?
say never. Huh?
You could probably be at like joke writing though. Are you?
Oh, I
you
would
think-
love that. Yeah.
come up with
Like to work in
bits?
a writer's room, I think would be super fun.
Yeah. You know, Caitlin
Like-
did stand up before.
You did stand up?
New York Comedy Club.
Yeah, I did it once, and it's definitely more nerve-wracking than fighting.
Really?
Cause like you get the same nervousness, like how I felt before was exactly the same, but when you fight, the second you start, the fight starts, it goes away because you're like
Takes
"All right."
over. Like you, yeah.
Yeah, so I like before I walk out, I always say like if I'm a little nervous, I'm like whatever. I just want to get out there. As soon as the bell rings, we start. Then I won't be nervous anymore, and I kind of like remind myself that. And then, but when I did stand up comedy, it gets worse as it starts. You kind of
Yeah.
black out, and then you're like talking, and I'm like, wait, what? What did I just say? I was like, I don't even know if because I wrote like a 5 minute set, and I basically just memorized it.
Yeah.
And my whole goal was like just to get through the set without like stuttering or stumbling or forgetting anything. So like there was no like charisma with it or like reading the crowds because I was just like, okay, here's my lines, and I'm just trying to go through it like straight. But the whole time you're nervous, whereas in a fight you can kind of like it doesn't go your
Yeah.
way. You kind of like
And
just
also in a
keep
fight,
going.
isn't it like a lot of it's more reactionary, right? Like where
Mhm.
I picture at least doing stand up, you're trying to remember the next joke or the next line
Yeah.
constantly. And in a fight, you're not like, let me remember the next move because you don't know what's coming next.
Yeah, you kind of just go with whatever's going, but like
Did you get laughs though? Was it like
You
good?
did. She did.
I got
Yeah.
but my thing was they told me that so it was a guy that does stand-up comedy, and he also he's like an Armenian guy that's also like interviewed me for he interviews fighters on his YouTube. So I knew him, and it was when there was UFC was at Madison Square Garden, and he goes, "Hey, it was like the day before. He goes, "We're doing a an event, it's all the fighters come out, and we're getting fighters to come out and then to do stand up." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, he goes, "Yeah, but it's like everyone, there's other fighters there." And he said like Aljo was going to be there and a couple other fighters. And I'm like, well, I know they don't do stand up. So if they're doing it, like, fine. I love comedy as like, an audience member. I love
Yeah.
watching it, and I love all the comedians. Like same thing. I listen to all those podcasts, but I was never thought to do it. But I was like, all right, bucket list, let's do it. Well, I get there. There's not one other fighter there.
Oh no. I knew
They're
you
like,
were gonna
okay,
say
here.
that.
I walk in. I'm like, hi, I'm here for the fight. I thought it was like going to be like fight fans watching fighters. Like it was going
Yeah.
to be like a gimmick, kind of like Dana White when he did it on.
I remember that.
I
Yeah.
thought that's what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
So I
You were
go
just in the middle of it.
They were
too.
like, okay, here you can go in the green room. I'm like, okay. I'm like, kind of like, no one's even like looking at me. No one knows who I am. I'm like,
You're just the new comic at the club that night.
and I look, and there's like people that are like writers for like, I don't know, some nighttime shows. And I'm like, oh my God. They're like, oh, so how long have you been doing comedy? I'm like, I've never. 3 days
Yeah.
ago when this guy DM'd me and asked me if I wanted to do it.
Yeah,
And
you're like 2 hours from now. That's how long.
yeah. And they were like, wait, you've never done it? I'm like, no, I thought that other fighters were, I got it wrong. I was like, I totally misunderstood what was happening. And then they put me in the lineup. Like, I'm like, was in the middle.
Yeah.
So I had to go after like real people that have been doing this. And
Like
they
the
didn't
flow of the
announce-
night's already started. Yeah.
So they're probably like, wait, what? But I think there was actually some people on there that weren't really that good. It wasn't.
There's some good ones though.
Yeah. Yeah, there was. But look, I think the good ones were kind of after me. So, and they did kind of announce it as like, oh, she's never done it before. Cause that's my thing. I was like, make sure they know what I thought. And then I remember the next day going to the fights and I saw Aljo. I was like, hey, I thought you were going to that comedy thing. He's like, yeah, I thought it was like a meet and greet. But then they said for me to go up and do comedy. He's like, I'm not doing that. I was like, yeah, I did it. You know? But it was cool.
How did it feel when you were done? Did you feel like I crushed that? Like almost like you want to fight or no?
I was definitely really proud of myself for it.
Yeah.
And I'm super happy I did it. After I was like, wow, I like that. I wish I could do it again. Cause now that I did it the first time, I'm like, all right, I know how I could do better. It's like that, you know what I mean? But you know, I respect it enough to know like how much work has to go into it.
Yeah.
You know, I respect enough to not just
That's like a full-time job, right?
Yeah.
And like, going to the club every night and figuring out how you could say I'm funny or figuring out the punchlines. Like, I respect that so much.
Yeah. That's why I said, I'm such a fan that I know how much work goes into it. And I'm like, I respect it enough to know, like, I'm not putting that much work into it.
You hear Rogan talk about it all the time, like with his boys, like going to like just the Comedy Store, like every single night until you get better, like every single, 12 p.m. Set or 12 a.m. shift you got to do. And that's like the grind of it. And it's like, I guess everything has that to a degree.
Everything.
I was like, I already do that with jujitsu. So I'm like,
yeah,
I can't do that. Like to do two things like that and really commit to yourself to it. It's pretty tough.
You could be the next Brendan Schaub, though. When you retire, you could go right into comedy.
Yeah, go right in. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, thanks so much for coming out, Rob, or coming on.
Yeah, of course. I really appreciate you guys having on.
Before you go, one thing I wanted to ask you about. So I wanted to get your opinion quick on so like Barstool obviously promotes like Patty the Vatty and then Meatball Molly. Obviously, me as a fighter, I get like bitter because I'm like, yo, like when I get Patty because he's obviously like a superstar, but like for a girl, and I like Molly a lot, but I was like, yo, this girl's got like is like 2-2 in the UFC. Why are they hyping her up like she, I'm like, she's gonna get smoked by Aaron. That's like amazing. I'm like,
tough.
how do they not know? But I think she kind of got on with like with Patty, like kind of like,
what it was like Patty captivated Dave with his UFC debut. I don't know even where Dave saw it, to be honest. I don't even know if Dave was watching like the fight or if he saw clips, but he was like, who is this guy? Like, and he's like you saw in Rogan, not a big like fight fan, but he was like, this guy's the next guy. So he reached out, signed Patty, and then kind of felt like, wait, you didn't tell us about Molly. This is like, seems like you guys are a tag team. Like you guys do videos together. You guys do content together. If we're signing you to make content, like that would be a good partner for you.
Yeah.
So on the night of UFC London, when
That
Patty
was
fought
huge.
Rodrigo, he said, if Molly gets a win here, I'll sign her.
Wow.
And she hit the spinning elbow. So that was like, holy fuck. She ran on
that whole night was like
across
that.
press row. Yeah. And I said, like, I had the video camera. I was like, Dave just said he's signing you to Barstool. And she was like, what the fuck? Like she was joking the night before. Like, imagine one day I got signed. and then
Wow.
we signed her. So that was how the Patty Molly connection came together. I think it was more not even like we think Molly's the next Khabib. I think it
Yeah,
was more like, oh
just
my
the
god,
charisma.
the partnership of like they call each other brother and sister like is too perfect for Barstool.
Right.
Especially like, yeah, that card in London was like them two. That was like a
That was
perfect show for
that
them,
was
you know?
insane. That was like I was lucky enough to be there. That was like my favorite crowd I've ever been in with
Yeah.
UFC. Drinks flying, like I had to like cover my computer because people are just throwing their beers and stuff. Like I've never seen anything like that. Even the second London card this year, it was fun, but it was nothing like the first London card.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was
crazy.
incredible.
So like, which I'm not hearing that kind of like makes it seem like cooler. So it was just like Dave was just like, I like this kid, and so then that kind of formed
That
that, which is
legitimately, it was the most natural. He was like, he almost felt bad, like, oh, I didn't realize like Molly's around here. He's like, we signed the one kid and we didn't sign the other. Like they
hmm
seem like they come together. They're cornering each
yeah,
other. They're coming out. So he loved the meatball nickname. That was big
yeah,
for Dave. Sometimes it's just that he was like the meatball nickname. We got to sign the meatball.
yeah. And then
It's
she had like two good, really good performances at that time. But I just wonder, I'm like, because, you know, as like the fighters are like, you know, what the heck? Like, because like Patty's last fight and Molly's last fight were both against New York and New Jersey people. And they're like,
I
come on,
know.
Barstool's there. That's like the US. But I think,
I know Frivola's pissed at me.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
well, they
constantly
probably
like,
want
I
to
was the OG
expand
guy.
into Europe.
If I had the Dave money, you're
Yeah.
signed, Frivola's signed, Billy
Yeah.
Quarantillo's signed, all my guys and girls.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But I
Dave,
think too, it's like sometimes for the fighters, you have to realize like we think of it so literal, like this person's ranked here, this person's better than her, this
It
one's
has
there.
nothing to do with
But
it.
like, and that's part of back to like what we talked about earlier. It's part of it becoming like a sport, like you know, it's not real. It's just some people like these people and they don't care if
Yeah.
they're if most fans are like, I don't care if this person's ranked number one or not ranked at all. I like watching this person fight, which is great for the fighters because that means everyone's excited to watch the whole entire card, and it gives you
of
chances.
course.
Someone like
Yeah.
Erin, like no one knew who she was. Now she like beat Molly the way she did. Now everyone knows who she is, you know? So it kind
Exactly.
of it helps everyone, but I think just in the moment it's like becoming so new that the fighters are like, "Oh, like why is this person? Like I would beat that person, but it doesn't matter. You could beat that person, you're not going to get this. You don't just because you beat someone that has all that recognition doesn't mean that you get it now."
And that does get tough with some fighters. Like Dave got into the fight with Justin Gaethje
Yeah.
because I think Justin Gaethje also looked at it like Barstool. Wanted to give Patty fight of the night. It was the worst fight of the night, and it's like the context of it, which I don't
Mhm.
expect you to know, is Dave and Big Cat are idiots, and in that moment, they know that Patty didn't get fight of the night,
Right,
and they're
Yeah.
right,
completely like, oh yeah, fight of the night, yeah, the one guy who didn't get a finish on this card, give it to him,
right.
like literally laughing about it like that, and then it becomes like, I'm gonna beat you up when I see you in person, Dave Portnoy, and it's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It seemed like even before like Patty signed with Barstool, it seemed like the UFC almost wanted to recreate Connor through him.
And how could they not? You see
Yeah.
a
But
European
to
guy
me,
come up
they're
through
they're
Cage
very
Warriors.
different. They're very
Yeah, no. Personality wise, fighting wise, very different people. I think they just looked at it from almost the broad strokes aspect of like, who's this crazy European coming up?
Yeah,
Where
exactly.
it's like
and a whole
two-time
a
Cage
whole country
Warriors
behind
champ.
him. A whole
Yeah.
country behind him. But when
Exactly.
Connor first came out, like what he did, his first like 7 fights, like
Oh my
people
God,
don't
featherweight
realize how
Connor.
insane that was.
Insane. When you look at his resume too, like the people he
Yeah.
actually beat to get up
Max
there, the
Holloway,
Max
Dustin.
Holloways, and yeah,
Yeah, because
crazy,
you can't
crazy
really
stuff.
recreate Connor with how good he was plus everything else.
He's
Like
one of a kind.
Patty's not the same because he
I
already
don't
has.
think Patty loves that either. Like whenever he's
Yeah,
in
he
interviews,
doesn't try to
right,
be
it's
like
a big
that.
shadow.
He's like, he always says like, I want to be the first Patty Pimblett. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I respect Connor, thanks to everything he did for the sport and everything, but I think he's also ready to move
I
on
think
from
that's
that.
smart. I think that's good that he does that because they're different. Like he's more like
Relatable.
nicer or something. Like
And you don't want to be the next anyone when you're
Right.
like 4, 5, 6 fights into the UFC. Like at that point, you just want to be you. And people
Right.
said it about O'Malley to a lesser degree, but
Oh, in the
people
beginning
tried to
they
like
were
say
Yeah.
he's kind of
They-
the next Connor, and like,
yeah, they were comparing him to him, and it's like You know what I mean? Like everyone has their
It's
own
very
thing.
different, yeah. And at this point, you look at O'Malley, and nobody calls him the next anyone. It's like
Yeah,
Sean
I almost
O'Malley
like
is
you said
his
that. I
own
forgot.
self.
I
Yeah,
forgot that that was his whole thing. Like he's the next Conor McGregor. I'm like, oh yeah, now like because you don't
it's
say
because he
that
had
at
a
all.
chest tattoo and a left hand. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's about as
basically.
far as it went.
Yeah, but yeah, it's crazy. It's just like keeps like every week there's fights. There's like a new star and a new person, which is amazing. Like they have fights all the time, and it just keeps growing. And
Except for this month, I'm going through withdrawals right now. I'm like, oh my
Sucks.
God, I can't believe there's been like 2 or 3 weeks without fights. Like
Saturday night, I don't know
nights,
what to do.
I have no idea what to do.
yeah,
I
because
went
when
to see
when they have
Avatar
fight,
last Saturday. Wasted 5 hours on that.
yeah, we have like
I
when the-
watched the entire card.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, same.
Yeah.
We put it on. That's why sometimes I'm like, if I'm like doing stuff on Saturday, I don't like the early cards because I'm like, oh, I have stuff to do. Like I'm like, I like
Yeah. Same.
watching all the fights all night long.
Yeah. It's the best.
Yeah,
It's the best.
it's funny because then I'm like, how do people watch football all day? And then I'm like, wait, I just did that yesterday. So
Yeah, and then
with
you're
fighting.
tuning into like the 2 prelim debuts.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
like them.
Against each
Sometimes
other,
those
you're
are the
like,
best
here we
ones.
go.
Yeah.
I like discovering someone.
Definitely.
Like,
I mean, the
like, oh,
Contender
that dude's
series
gonna
has
be
been
good.
awesome for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Like
Yeah.
so much fun. Like Tuesday night fights, I love. I love when the PFL does a Wednesday night card. Like just getting
Yeah.
fights midweek, I love.
It's cool.
Yeah. That's why I even when the Jake Paul fights, I'm like, all the other fighters like, who watches that trash? I'm like, I do. I watch them.
Yeah.
I watch them. I'm like, because it's on Fridays, so you get 2 days in a row of fights.
Exactly.
But,
It's like
yeah.
an Eve, like a UFC Eve card.
Yeah, pumps you up for the fights. But yeah, thanks for coming on. We love talking to you. It's been like you said, 6 years. It's crazy.
Crazy. I can't believe it. But thanks for having me again. Appreciate it. I'll come on anytime. Love you guys. We'll say
Amazing.
yes to
Thank you.
whatever.
And congrats with everything you got going on. It's really, really
Yeah,
great.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Happy for you.
awesome. Thank you.